We'll go ahead and get started. Roll call, please.
Harrington,
Here.
Hoffman,
Here.
Pollock,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Wason.
Here.
The agenda is before you. Anything? No, there's been nothing changed. So a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The consent agenda, anything within that that you'd like to pull out and talk about first? If not, a motion to approve the consent agenda would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Kevin,
Okay, I just have a couple things tonight. St. Andrews Drive, we had a construction progress meeting this morning. It went well. The project's going pretty good. They're still working on bringing in fill and compacting that and storm sewer. They've got a lot of storm sewer installed, so seeing pretty good progress. They'll be doing the same stuff the next 2 weeks, bringing in more fill. Next week, they're actually going to take out the road. The east entrance to Centennial Park is open and people are using that. There will be a short period next week where they have to run a pipe underneath the road. They'll still be able to get in using one lane, so they'll have flaggers during that time, but once they're done, it'll be back up to 2 lanes of traffic to the park. And then Ranch Hallway Phase 5, we have started design work now. We won't have anything for a little while to submit to city staff, but as soon as we do, we're going to have our first staff meeting to start reviewing and discussing the design. And then, well, really, that's about it, unless you guys have any questions.
questions for Kevin? Thank you, Kevin. Ryan?
Good evening, everyone. Few updates regarding our COVID response that I'll go through, and then I have a few non-COVID positive updates for the group. I think you all know that we've extended our building closures and our staffing plan through Sunday, May 31st. So we'll continue to evaluate the situation. If things change, we can modify that as well. But at this point, that's what we've communicated to our staff, as well as the fact that when we do open up, we'll do so incrementally so that we're not bringing everybody back at once. We've canceled all in-person recreation and library program with the exception of the summer camp program at the rec center. That will start in June. All the in-person recreation and library programming is through June at this point. However, the library is doing a lot of their programming virtually, which has been a success. As I mentioned, the summer camp program, which we've done every year for a number of years, is slated to move forward. We have 60 kids enrolled there. And of course, we'll be implementing very similar distancing and hygiene policies that we did for the emergency childcare program that we're currently running. As I mentioned, the library is doing a great deal of virtual programming. A big program for them every summer is the summer reading program. That'll all be done virtually. And they'll continue to do their contactless curbside service. This has been a very popular service. They're able to take books out or movies or whatever folks are borrowing, put it in the person's trunk, and then they can move on without any contact. If they're putting it in a hatchback or something where in the back seat of something, they actually set it on the ground and let the patron come and get it, so that it really is truly a contactless service. The indoor-outdoor pools, splash pads, and playgrounds have been closed indefinitely. We are still going to fill the outdoor pool, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to use it sometime this season. The challenge is the pools were one of the first things closed. I imagine they'll be one of the last things opened up, but we're planning for that. As you are all aware, and I suspect there'll be some discussion on at some point, the ball fields at this point are closed for organized sports through June. We were supposed to have our junk day last Saturday, and of course that was postponed, and we're shooting for a fall date there. And then finally, with all of our closures and cancellations, we've put a date to all of them, but what we've stressed to our staff is we need to be nimble. Our team is meeting regularly. We continue to have a great deal of discussion on the operations. And it is our hope that our messaging and our actions set a standard and provide example for the community to follow. So that's just a real quick overview. I think the bottom line is, as it is in most organizations, I'm sure it's on the forefront. We're talking about it every day and trying to still provide the services that we can. A couple non-COVID related issues. The PD is getting very close. I know I said that last time. We're even closer. 2 weeks later now, the furnishings are installed. And we're actually doing a walkthrough for the inside this week for a punch list. So we're very close there. And then just an update or a kind of advance notice for the next meeting. We'll have a pretty packed agenda. We are going to have the social service applications on the agenda. I don't know that we have a plan in place yet on how we'll do that, but expect that to be coming. I think Tracy emailed all the applications to you folks earlier this week. We will have an update from the newly appointed ICAD president, Kate Moreland. You might remember that Kate was scheduled to visit with us right as the kind of the pandemic broke, and so we postponed that. She'll be here in 2 weeks to provide an update. And then lastly, we'll start proceedings for our borrowing. We've completed a lot of projects. We're in the process of completing a lot of projects. This is going to be a big borrowing. It's in our models. It's going to be close to $10 million, but we'll start those proceedings at the April 28th, or beg your pardon, May 12th City Council meeting. And those are the updates I have tonight, Mayor, unless there are questions.
Questions for Ryan?
I do have a question in terms of the childcare usage right now for the emergency childcare. What are the current numbers? And if, say, for instance, this continues to go on, are those kids still going to remain in the childcare in addition to those 60?
What we've communicated to the current group is that at the end of the school year, we will no longer be operating the emergency child care facility, and it moves over to the summer camp. Now I know at least one or two of those kids that are and it could be more, I just happen to know of a couple of them, we can check on those numbers, are going to be joining us in the summer program, summer camp. I have not heard whether or not the others, if they're in a bind or not, if they're looking for opportunities, but I can certainly follow up with recreation staff on that and see what's going on. I think our latest numbers are still floating around 5 to 7, so they're not big numbers, but certainly it's important for those 5 to 7 families.
And Ryan, on the 60 kids in that summer program, so that everybody knows, could you give us a little bit of an update about how this will be conducted this summer compared to summers in the past? I mean, what you guys do right now for those kids in there from an emergency standpoint, maybe everyone doesn't even know how the building is being used. So I imagine it's similar.
Yeah, in the past, we were able to have those kids in bigger groups. This summer, of course, we'll have these 60 kids spread out the entire facility, broken down into groups of 10 or less, and then daily checks, health checks when they come into the facility. No field trips this year, unfortunately. Most everything internal. We'll try to get them outside, of course, to parks, not playgrounds, but parks and or walking trails, etc. But it will be a limited version of what we've done in the past. Now we're still going to they're thinking about new ideas for internal projects versus field trips. So I think they'll still have fun. We just won't be able to do some of the things we've traditionally done.
Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, we'll move ahead. Mayor's report. There's one thing I wanted to share with you this evening was a communication from Sarah Barron, excuse me. I told her that I would release this to the council. The Affordable Housing Coalition would like to thank the City of North Liberty for its careful response of providing uninterrupted water, sewer, and refuse service to residents during the COVID-19 crisis. As a follow-up to our letter of April 16th, we would like to comment on the importance of utility relief for North Liberty residents and ask the council to consider offering utility bill forgiveness to households that are struggling economically because of COVID-19. Through the state moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, along with the city's moratorium on utility shutoffs, North Liberty residents have been offered important temporary relief from housing insecurity. When these moratoriums lift, residents will be faced with impossible choices about how to secure their most basic needs. Bills that have been deferred are piling up for many families, and we currently have no federal or state plan for preventing a massive sustained crisis in our overall housing market. So basically what it comes down to is we are asking the council if there's any interest in looking at a program for water and sewer relief.
What kind of guidance do you want from us right now, or how deep can we get into this conversation, Mayor?
Well, I think we can get to the point of giving myself and also the city staff, direction at looking at possible scenarios and possible cost.
Okay. Could we start with where the city is right now, whether that's Tracy or Ryan, telling us how we are dealing with water bills right now? I believe currently there's an option to set up a pretty flexible payment program. Can you elaborate on that in any way? Either
of you?
I'm happy to. So we are not shutting anyone off that is past due, not assessing penalties. We are offering the option that if someone requests, they can submit an application for what we would typically do as a payment arrangement, but instead of a payment arrangement, we're doing 90 days of forbearance, for lack of a better word. So for 90 days, no payment is necessary, with the potential that we'll reevaluate as we go. At the end of that 90 days, the balance that would have been accumulated on that account will be spread out over a period of months. So that person has the option to just pay their current bill plus a portion of what they had accumulated over those 3 months, with the understanding that we can look at that on a case-by-case basis and stretch it out further if need be, or what have we, based on the needs of the city. We've had one request so far for that forbearance, and it was granted. Someone that's unemployed due to her profession. Other than that, we haven't heard a whole lot from the public. Anecdotally, my staff has said that they've been really busy with people paying their balances and then some using their stimulus money. Looking at our aging report, which shows our past dues, Mary Byers advised it looks no different than it did last month. So people are in a pretty solid position right now and are keeping up, but we are really willing to work with folks if people are having a problem. When you get into the point of forgiving water and sewer, the city still has costs. We still have bond payments to pay. We still have all of the other things that go along with that. It would really depend on the quantity of customers that request that and what their bill levels are at that point in time.
I think that's fantastic, Tracy. And to know that that's basically there already, what Sarah is asking for, I think is probably as much as we need to do right now until which time this becomes something that is more, for lack of a better word, popular. I think as long as it's communicated to Sarah, Mayor, that we have this program in place and that people, only one person has used it so far, but it is certainly an option. I think I would be comfortable just continuing this program as we see it being utilized right now, and not putting ourselves in that position to say we could do more than that, because as Tracy mentioned, we do have bond payments and revenue estimates that are based upon those payments being made.
Any other thoughts from the rest of you?
That would be my recommendation as well, to continue how we are, considering that the requests have been rather small right now. And in talking about them applying for that forbearance, they would have to have proof of, unemployment, or
Sure.
what kind of requirements should they bring in?
In the situation that we had, the person is self-employed, doesn't qualify for unemployment, so it was a pretty slam dunk. But we certainly can require that proof if council directs to go that direction. Folks aren't being forgiven. They're just delaying the inevitable, for lack of a better word. I encouraged this customer to continue to try to pay something, even if it's $20 a month, to pay something, because she will eventually have to pay it all.
Anybody else?
I think, Mayor, I think what we have in place seems to be working. Appreciate Sarah emailing all of us and reaching out. I do want to, I'm sure Mayor Tracy, Ryan, you'll keep us apprised if there's more people who are reaching out for this assistance. I just like to keep us up to date of that, please. So if we need to reevaluate what we're doing, or if we feel collectively we need to do more, it would just be good to know what those numbers are of residents, so we can continue to evaluate that.
Anyone else?
With everybody else.
Okay. Brent's shaking his head yes, so it must be a concurrence. That's the way we'll go then, and respond to Sarah accordingly. Thank you. Next item is urban renewal, Diamond Dreams. Tonight we have the third and final consideration adoption of ordinance 2020-01, an ordinance providing for the division of taxes levied on taxable property in the March 2020 addition to the North Liberty Urban Renewal Area pursuant to section 403.19 of the Code of Iowa. Anyone have any questions on that before we proceed? If that not, then I'd like to have a motion to adopt the third and final.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Final questions. Tracy, please.
You're on mute still, Tracy.
let me go down the list. Smith,
Aye.
I'm unmuted.
There we go.
well, let's unmute the vote then.
Can we start over? Hoffman,
Yes,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Pollock,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
I heard 5 affirmative, none opposed. Is that correct? Third and final reading passes 5 affirmative, none opposed. Number 2, resolution number 2020-40. A resolution amending development agreement with Diamond Dreams Sports Academy, LLC, authorizing annual appropriation tax increment payments and pledging certain tax increment revenues to the payment of the agreement. Any questions on that? If not, would accept a motion to set the resolution in action.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yep, I'll second. I have a question though. Is this the agreement part?
Ryan?
Yes, it is the agreement. And that was emailed to the group earlier today, and I'm happy to go through that, or I know Chris had some questions. Happy to talk through those now if you'd like.
Yeah.
All right. I see Kyle and Mike are both on. Do they have something to add?
Not at the time, we do not. This is Kyle.
Okay.
This is Mike. Unless you have some questions that we'd be glad to answer.
I've got a couple, and thanks for rescuing this, Brian. I lost my screen for a moment. I had the same question Brian did, whether this was the agreement that you had just emailed to us late this morning, Ryan. So I did have a few questions, most likely for city staff and just for mechanical purposes here. Mike and Kyle, are you guys both owners of DD Building LLC, or Kyle, are you the sole owner of it?
We're both owners of the building, not the business, of the building.
The business that's being granted in the agreement, DD
Correct.
Building LLC?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And Ryan, there's mention of an $8,000 administrative fee inside of this agreement. Does that come out of the $320,000 of appropriations that we'll have, or will we get that back first and then appropriate $320,000 to this in this agreement?
Yeah, 320. A couple of things. First, yes, it's 8,000 plus the 320 if it
Okay.
gets there. So the 320,000 is the not to exceed for the developer, and so presumably in each year their rebate, if their assessment goes up, their rebate will go up. And so perhaps they get to 320 in year 4, and then in year 5 we don't make a payment, or perhaps after year 5 they only get to 300, and then the agreement's capped there. And so every year they'll receive, a portion of that 320, depending on what the final assessed value is, and what that bottom and what the base value is established at. But the first payment will subtract $8,000 out, and that'll go towards the cost to put all this stuff in place that we've been acting on the last couple months.
Okay, and then we could be out then the $320,000 from that point on, not out payment to appropriations. So yes.
It won't be any more than that. Right?
Yes, correct. Okay. The other question I had then was, when will our first payment be made? And is there a schedule that could be included in this agreement? I think, would it be FY23 where this first payment would be made? So we got 23, 24, 25, 26, and 27?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
And that's the traditional language that Dorsey and Whitney uses in these agreements. They they call out the first year and then and that final year, assuming, of course, that they hadn't exceeded that 320 already. Again, I want to emphasize that if we get to year 5 and they've already exceeded that 320, that's a good thing in terms of the building's generating property taxes, but then we're done, we're capped there.
Yep.
So but your assessment, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27.
That sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, I saw the end date of 27 in there. I just must have overlooked the start date on this payment. So I assumed that it was a FY 23. So thank you. That's all I had.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so you mailed that after I've been at work, since 6 o'clock. So I haven't read it at all. So I need to know what's in it. So can you maybe go over what the requirements are for them?
Yeah, so I think probably the biggest change from the last agreement, because this agreement is very similar to what was included in your April 14th packet, with the exception of a provision called use of space. And what we tried to do there, and this was a joint effort between Mike and Kyle and myself, and to tell you the truth, Mike did the lion's share of the work here on this, but put together what I think is a pretty inclusive definition of underserved kids. And I'll read that to you here, just so you have a better understanding of that. But it talks about the use of space provision, says that the company agrees to allow the use of the completed space free of charge, including the provisions of instructional staff, to entities providing services to underserved children as herein after defined for at least 120 hours a year. So that generally is what we talked about going into this. And then we get into for the purposes of this agreement, underserved children means children that have had limited access to or participation in athletics or proper physical and or social activity, which would aid in their childhood development. The company will rely on the expertise of local agencies to best identify underserved children in the area. The company will establish a program that will allow for various established charitable, not-for-profit, or other similar agencies which have underserved children as the primary mission or one of their top missions to sign up and use the facility during designated times. And then it goes on to list examples, include the North Liberty Unity Coalition, United Action for Youth, Camp Courageous, Family Student Advocates, Johnson County 4-H, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Liberty Central Noble Knights, neighborhood centers of Johnson County, and Successful Students Inspired Through Knowledge, Education, and Diversity, which is at Liberty High School. And then we go on to say the list is not meant to be comprehensive or exclusive. It's meant to give us an idea, and that there could be organizations formed after we approve this agreement that would also benefit. And then it says, when possible and practical, this service shall be directed to benefit children that reside in North Liberty city limits, but shall not meant to exclude any underserved children in the area. It's kind of a mouthful there, Brian. Hopefully that made sense. I guess from my perspective.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Chris.
Brian, I was going to say, I think from the perspective of other agreements like this that we've seen in the past, the language, all of the skeleton is still the same. What's different is that there's no language related to job creation or profits of some sort that we have traditionally looked for in other of these types of agreements. So what is different and unique about this one is the creation of opportunities for kids free of charge to use this service. And that was a way for us to feel comfortable in granting this type of appropriation each year. I guess I did have one other question I forgot to ask. What measurement will we use? How will we know that at least 120 hours a year are being provided or offered to these nonprofit groups?
Yeah, we've talked about this already with Mike and Kyle, and we'll ask for an annual report from them outlining what organizations they've served, how many hours, specific times, et cetera. And we'll ask them that they've already committed to having that certified by the organization's, the person in charge or of the organization or of the program.
That's great. Thank you very much, guys.
Brian, any more questions that you would like to have answered?
No, I think we did answer the question that Kyle does remember that it's a yearly appropriation and stuff. So I just want to make sure we were clear on all that and everything. So.
Yeah, they're shaking their heads, yes. Rakisha, you are prime driver on this one. Are you satisfied?
I am, and I can appreciate, spelling out what underserved meant or what it looks like and not limiting that to just certain organizations, but being open to it. So I can really appreciate you all like really thinking about that and pushing forward with that.
Good. Any other questions? Ready to vote? Tracy,
Harrington,
Aye.
Hoffman,
Aye.
Pollock,
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
I heard 5 affirmative and no nay. Is that correct? Resolution passes 5 affirmative, none opposed. Gentlemen, thank you for your efforts. Appreciate it.
Good luck, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Good
you.
luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're sticking around for the rest of the meeting, aren't you?
Yeah, sure. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yay.
Employee handbook, resolution number 2020-41, resolution approving the revised personnel manual. Any questions beforehand before we make movement on this one? Deb, any comments that you'd like to make?
Not really, unless anyone has questions that I could possibly answer, but we've taken a lot of time and covered pretty much every section to update and just make sure we're in compliance with all the laws and regulations. So.
And
Yeah,
also,
Deb, sorry,
Go ahead.
Mayor. Yeah, it was very comprehensive, a lot to digest through that. Obviously hard for counselors who are not indulged in this every day like you are to pick things out. Certainly trust the work that was done and appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I've got one, Mayor.
Sure, go ahead, Annie.
So Deborah, I think it was 2011, correct? So thanks for all your work over the years on this.
Yeah.
Just a question, and I apologize. I know I didn't send this ahead of time, but for the conflict of interest section on page 10, it talks about any city employees or elected officials. So are we concerned, or are there thoughts on if anyone serving on a commission or a board with a conflict of interest as well to be raised? Maybe that's for you too, Grant. I don't know.
Grant?
There would not be. That's if you're getting compensated that way, those boards are going to be advisory. So I don't think there's going to be any. You guys are the ones that are going to be making ultimate decisions. So I don't believe so. Is that responsive to your question, Annie?
Yes, still with like the Board of Adjustment.
Right. So if someone be employed by the city and also be on the Board of Adjustment, no, they would need to not be a city employee.
Okay, or I was when I was reading through it, I was just curious why we don't have the commissions or boards within the conflict of interest too.
Oh yeah, just because they're advisory.
Okay. And then is there anything, Deb, in light of our current pandemic that we have adjusted, thought differently about, or anything we're changing in light of this now? I know, we talk about emergency closings of things, more storm related environmental issues. I just don't know if there's anything different or new to add or things that have been adjusted before the final draft here is presented.
I did check with Holly at Lynch Dallas, and she did not think that we needed to do anything different for that, for the COVID or situations like it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got one more last question. So when we talk about, I know there was a response already via email on the hiring of relatives, but just the language that's used there versus the language we use it later. Maybe I'll just email it offline. Just curious, in different parts, the language is different for relatives. And then later we talk about immediate family members. I think it's for the bereavement. Just curious why we don't use the same language in those places.
Do you want to hit that one again?
Sure. So on page 12, we talk about hiring of relatives and what that encompasses. And I know there was a specific question answered beforehand, but then later I actually forgot to write the page number down. We talk about later, I think it's in the bereavement example policy, Deb, about immediate family members. I was just surprised that the language of hiring of relatives was different. It wasn't as encompassing as the bereavement policy piece. I don't know if that's from our attorney's advice or if there's anything there, but just thinking about that piece.
I don't know the answer to that, Annie, why it's different.
I'm afraid I couldn't tell you either. I didn't, obviously this was a Lynch Dallas product.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I just want to tell Deb I really liked it. It was very consistent looking through, and other than a few things that I was fussy about, and I appreciate that. Apparently that got fixed. So.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
And we'll look into your question, Annie, and get back to you. Just looking at it real briefly, I think that we're very specific on in the bereavement leave section, just so that we have a clear and concise answer when folks are looking to take paid bereavement leave for a family member. And so there's intentionally some specificity there, but we'll follow up with a more thorough answer after this.
Okay, thank you. And Deb, just thanks again. I'm sure this was a very long project that you're excited to finally bring to us tonight. So
I am. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Deb. It looked really good and it was easy to follow, like was mentioned before. So I can appreciate that.
Likewise. Thank you, Deb.
Any other questions? Ready to vote? Anyone wish to establish resolution 2020-41?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Final questions or discussion? Tracy?
Pollock,
aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Hoffman,
Aye.
Harrington.
Aye.
I heard 5 ayes, no nays. Is that correct? Resolution passes 5 affirmative, none opposed. Next, you have a resolution number 2020-42. This is a resolution declaring that certain fundraising activities by City of North Liberty employees serve a public purpose. Deb or Ryan, do you want to go in that a little deeper, or Grant?
Sure. This resolution has language that's identical to resolutions that's passed in a number of other cities. Iowa City is one example. Iowa Constitution prohibits the spending of public resources, whether that's city money or city employee time, staff time, for private purposes, generally speaking, in order to officially spend money or allow staff to donate staff time to a charitable cause. you fine folks need to declare that what we're doing is serving a public purpose. Some of those things are pretty easy. The United Way is a kind of a gimme, right? That's an obvious public purpose. Some other charities might not necessarily be as obvious, and so this resolution is designed to allow the city and staff to volunteer their time in such a way that complies fully with the Constitution and with that public purpose requirement.
Questions on that? Anyone wish to establish that resolution, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Final questions? Tracy, take a roll, please.
Pollock,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Harrington,
Aye.
Hoffman.
Aye.
I heard 5 ayes, no nays. Is that correct? Resolution passes 5 affirmative, none opposed. Old business. New business.
I just wanted to jump in and say thank you to city staff. I know the ball fields conversation has been a difficult one there for you guys this past week. And as I mentioned to the mayor and to Ryan, I'm fully supportive of your efforts and that timeline that's been laid out. I think it's the most prudent thing for us to do at this very moment. Appreciate that.
One thing that I did do is that I sent a questionnaire to Matt and asked him various questions about practice time. Are different age groups going to be, not playing because of a tight timeline, et cetera, et cetera. I will be more than happy to share that document with you, but it will be a decent planning document of questions that we all have on this one, especially when it comes to parents or friends and relatives coming to ball games, to practices, to da 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 da. So you'll be seeing that document here probably within the next day or two. And I committed Matt that he'd answer my questions directly. And I told him that it would be used as a planning document as needed. So that's the best I can tell you at this time.
That's great. And I think that just goes to another layer of conversation and discussion that this group, not this group on the screen right now, very few of us have been a part of this, but our department heads have been doing with all organizations in the city, businesses and residents as well. So I think that's a great tool to be used. And so far, the response that we saw in Ryan's email this morning that Nick had put out to the resident that had a question to the city, I thought was very thoughtful as well. And it made a lot of sense, and for reasoning why we have gotten to this point where we are right now.
Okay. Any other comments?
So Mayor, I'd like to take a couple minutes. I think there's a number of things to discuss here. I was a bit surprised to be notified of the decision on a Facebook post. I did bring up that point with Ryan, and we talked through that, had a good discussion on that. I did call you as well about that. I felt that this decision possibly should have included council when it was made on Wednesday or Thursday, as we were very near a council meeting. Just like various other decisions that are made in the city, we ask for recommendations of boards and councils and staff. And I think that this is a significant enough decision. I would have, as a counselor, like to have been made aware and brought into the conversation prior to the decision being made. I explained to Ryan and the mayor a few points. Obviously, the health and safety of our citizens is of paramount importance. And my disagreement with this decision has nothing to do with a disagreement with the making decisions that are the best for the health and safety of our residents. I have been on board 100% with the decisions that have been made to this point with the COVID response, from the way that staff has been set up and working from home, the closures of the facilities, all of those things have been very good decisions, and I've always been supportive of staff. Mr. Hoffman took exception to that in his response this evening, maybe stating that I am not supportive of staff. That is not the case, and I think Ryan would probably be one of the first ones to tell you, since I've joined council, that couldn't be any farther from the truth. We should be making these decisions on closures more incrementally, in my opinion. Closing fields all of May, right now with the data and information that we have seen from the county public health officials and the state, makes sense. And I agree with that decision, that we should not be holding practices or games in the month of May. By closing all of June on April 24th, I think is going a bit too far. I know, Ryan, you made the comment in the last council meeting on your intro that it felt like the 84th day of April. And it certainly did, because so many things had changed and in just a 2-week period. And so when we have that amount of change of data coming in and things changing in our environment right now, I think that closing out that far, we need to take another look at that. I agree and support, again, the closure in May. Here's what I did, as I always do when topics come up for discussion. I did my homework and I went out and talked to folks. And there was a reference to a campaign that may have been made on behalf of myself. If the reference to the campaign was referred to going out and soliciting input from the baseball community, soccer community, yes, I did. I am a coach of a local baseball team and have access to many coaches and teams' emails. And so I reached out to all of them to solicit info and feedback, made them aware that I was concerned about closing through June, because I knew what that is going to do for all of our baseball, soccer teams, and many other rec teams. If we make the decision to close all of June, that will effectively make the decisions for all of those teams to cancel their seasons for the summer. And Ryan did a great job of explaining, well, yes, we did decide, here's how we decided, here's how all of the department heads came together, here's the consensus process we went through, and here's how we arrived at the decision. And that was great, and I respect that. And then he said we could, as we go along in May, if we see that things are changing and things are getting better, we can always come back and open up earlier. Well, my view of this is, if we do that and we close the fields right now, we're making the decisions for all of those teams. The season is over. They will cancel their seasons. They will refund all of the money. And then if the city decides with new information that comes along in the next 2, 3, even 4 weeks, that, hey, we're good to open June 1st, let's go ahead and open up, it will be too late, because all of that money will have been refunded. The teams will have canceled their seasons, and they won't have the option to do that. And so that's what I'm looking for, I guess, tonight, Mayor, is for us to reconsider that, and understanding that Councilor Smith is 100% behind the decisions that have been made to this point. And if we come to May 20th, May 25th, and city staff and leadership has decided that it's best, with the information that we have at that time, to close fields in June, then I will be 100% behind that decision, and would like to be part of that discussion with council at that time. But making that decision now, I believe, is a little premature, and I would ask that we reconsider.
I'll just jump back in here real quick. Brent, my comments were not intended personally. I think that you are a person that obviously gets out into the community and talks to folks. Every single one of the closure decisions that the city has been making over the last month and a half has been without council's consideration and discussion. So up until this point, everything that they've done, I have trusted and I have felt has been in our best interest. And I continue to feel that way about these ball fields being closed. Recent numbers that we're getting from the CDC, the state of Iowa, indicate that we're not going to peak here in Iowa for another 2-ish weeks. That means we hit the high water mark. By the end of May, we're still going to be seeing people die. And because of the governor's loosening of these restrictions last week, that could allow 77 counties to open up partially yet this Friday. There's an ever increasing likelihood that our peak may still be in May, but it's going to extend well past that end of June deadline or that end of June timeline that the University of Washington model predicts right now. So I don't believe telling folks or giving them the opportunity that we might do something in June 1st is realistic. And thus I felt the decision and what staff has decided was prudent enough. You can rattle off just about every possible public get together through July, some even into August and into September that have been canceled already. Ragbri, right across Iowa, both of those were to happen in July. Blues and Barbecue has been canceled, and in large part for planning purposes, getting sponsors to commit to those funds that they did 9 months ago is a way different ask. I know the Convention and Visitors Bureau is working with this when they're even considering Fry Fest at the end of August and into September. So there are a lot of businesses and nonprofits that will be a part of the Ragbri, Blues and Barbecue and other things at the CVB. And it's good planning for them to say, we're not going to be doing these events even into July. And so planning, I think, is helpful if folks know we might not be up and running or not even giving them the possibility of June right now. So that's where I was coming from with those comments. Again, I felt like what city staff has been doing thus far has not had any discussion on our part, and I have been fully supportive of them.
Well, we'll stop that conversation right now. Is that the thing is that within the group, we've all mutually agreed that all decisions are reviewable. If we get back on the fields one way or another, June 1st, fine, if it's for practice or whatever. But again, we will base it on data that is coming in and deciding from where it comes in and how pertinent it is to our city. Anything else from anybody? How are you all doing at home in job? Okay. Brian, the Masked Avenger, when he sat down.
Yeah, that gets to be a little tiring to wear that all day long. So, but I had to hide over here in a room that doesn't have anybody in it right now. So
You better mark that room so you don't forget where it's at.
no, they're pretty full.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Brian.
No, we've just been really full. So we actually kind of really slowed down for a while. And then everybody who kind of held out for a while because they didn't want to come to the hospital decided to come to the hospital all at the same time as all the COVID-19 people.
The thing that we're understanding, not only from this region, but every other region, is like ER visits and things like that are going down, but the acuity of the patient's condition is going up, getting worse. So they're waiting before they come in, which is sad to see, but that's what's occurring.
Waiting too long.
Yeah. Lakeisha, how's things at home there with you?
Things are going good here. I'm on a rotating schedule to working for the city of Iowa City. So I go in every other day as well. So just trying to keep everybody healthy and safe and only go out when necessary is what we're doing. So fingers crossed.
Good. Annie?
Good, Mayor. All good. Hopefully same for everyone. Thanks for checking in.
Brent?
Yes, sir. Doing well.
Okay. Chris, I know he's all right. He's across the street. So Deb, you doing okay? Ryan?
Yeah, we've all been hunkered down here in the house for a long time, so we haven't killed each other yet.
Ryan had some good news. He sold his house in Davenport and can now move toward the area, correct?
Under contract, so I'll celebrate officially when I hand the keys over.
Yeah, when you get the thing going and you can pop the champagne bottle, right?
That's right. That's right.
That's it.
We're excited to move.
Grant, how's it going with you, buddy?
Any better, they'd start calling me Terry. Everything's okay.
Okay. Tracy?
I'm doing fine when I can find the mute button.
Okay. Kevin, how's it going with you?
Going well. Yeah, no
Good.
problems.
Ryan, I talked to you enough. I don't need to know. Anything from anybody else? We are adjourned. Thank you all for your attendance on Zoom.
Thanks, guys.